by introducing some key philosophical concepts and the prominent characters they mentioned. So then going forward in the Krishna. The first sloka talks about the 7 characteristics of absolute truth, and sloka number 2 and sloka number 3 talks about Srimad Bhagavatam, how the dharma projita kaitava paramo nirmacharam satam, and how it is Bhagavate Mahamani Krutam. So it has been written by Mahamuni like Vyasadeva Muni, and then how it is a matured fruit. Then from the chapter 1 to chapter 3, all the 6 questions are mentioned and their answers. And we also discussed that how these 3 questions, 6 questions aspect the 3 topics which are Bhakti, Bhagavan and Bhagavatam. And going forward, the sages ask further questions. So what is the history of Bhagavatam? How did Parikshit Maharaj come there, and how did he leave the whole thing, and the appearance of Sukadeva Goswami? And then how Vyasadeva was completely unsatisfied. He was not satisfied despite doing all those things. And for all of us, it's a big lesson for all of us, thinking that we'll get satisfaction which are not even related to the spiritual things, related to Krishna. There is no question of anything. Then Sutta Goswami gets little excited, and then he talks about the different aspects of the Lord and devotees reciprocation, Ashwatthama, then prayers by Arjun, Uttara's request for prayer, then Kunti Maharani requesting Krishna not to leave, and the beautiful prayer 1.8.26 to 52. And then Pitama Bhishma pacifies Yudhishthira Maharaj, Pitama Bhishma leaving. And then Lord finally starts to Dwarka, and then the citizens at Hastinapur are feeling the separation, and at the same time the citizens at Dwarka are very happy welcoming Lord. Then the main topic, how Parikshit Maharaj's appearance, and before describing his character activities, what are the events that led to that, and that events are Vidura coming from pilgrimage, then instructing Dhritarashtra leaves home, Pandava leaves home, and finally before Pandavas leaves home, leaves to forest, Yudhishthir Maharaj put Parikshit Maharaj as the king of the whole universe, and then we know that Parikshit Maharaj punishing, and finally he was cursed. Then when he was cursed, he comes to the bank of Ganges, and the sages were assembled there, very great sages like Atri Muni, Bhrigu Muni, Vasishtha, Parashara, Vishwamitra, Angira. Okay. And then at the same time, he asked the question. So what was the question that Parikshit Maharaj asked to the sages?
How to live and how
What
to live.
should be done? Okay.
Yes. What should be done, and especially the duty of everyone in all circumstances. Very good. And when, as the divine arrangement, Sukadeva Goswami appears on the scene, and then Parikshit Maharaj offering his obeisances, making him sit, and then he asks some additional questions. Please tell me what a man should hear, chant, and remember and worship, and what he should not. So that is the end of Canto 1. And Canto 2 begins with that. So if you see any definition, typically consists of what is the positive, what should be done, and what should not be done. Or suppose, for example, what is a bhakti? So what bhakti consists of and what bhakti does not consist of. So similarly, so the question that Parikshit Maharaj asked, what shouldn't or what we should hear and chant. And Sukadeva Goswami begins the definition of a person who is a Grihomedi. And he says that Grihomedis, they are blind to the knowledge of the, and this is the second and third sloka, they are apashyatam atma tattvatam. They are apashyatam Atma Tattvam. They are blind to the Atma Tattva, the ultimate truth. And they are such a persons are Gruheshu Gruho Medinam. They are the Gruho Medi. And what is their subject matter for hearing? There are many subject matters, Sukadeva Goswami says, for hearing in the human society, oh emperor. So he said, there are, but before that, actually, before he answers, he glorifies. And that is very important. Sukadeva Goswami complimenting Parikshit Maharaj on the depth of his question, because you can understand that the question that being asked. So if we go to spiritual personalities and if we ask questions, can you please tell me when can I earn so much of money, when can I get a job, or when my these miseries will disappear? No, he asked very deep and profound question, and Sukadeva Goswami is glorifying that, because he said your question is glorious. Because why the question is glorious? Because it is asked by Parikshit Maharaj. No, the question is very deep, depth of question, and it is beneficial to all kinds of people. Because the answer to this question is the prime subject matter of hearing, and it is approved by all the sages, great personalities. So he glorifies, Sukadeva Goswami first glorifies that, and then he starts talking about that. So this is very important, that when we ask questions to great personalities, we should be asking questions. And how do we know the question is glorious? Whether this question is beneficial to the all kinds of people. And not only that, the answer to that question will be the supreme subject matter for hearing, and that should be approved by the great personalities. And he said, so then he says, okay, let me then answer your question. And then he begins what we should not hear. And then he talks about the Gruha Medi. Gruha Medis are completely absorbed in the material topics. There are thousands and Bhahushaka He Anantasya Buddhayo Avyavsainam. He says there are unlimited branches for that discussion. And then he says they are busy for what? The lifetime of such a householder is Nidra. They are Nidrahiyate Naktam Vyavaye Chavavaya Diva Charte Haya Rajan Kutumba Bharanenava Kutumba Bharanena. That means their time is just passing by, only maintaining the family member. Of course, it says the daytime we are enjoying working so hard, night time enjoying in the sense gratification, and the daytime either in making money or maintaining the family members. So this is how the time is being passed. And then at sometimes, if we are by the mercy of spirit, by the mercy of sages, or by mercy of Krishna, if we happen to come to our senses, and then light will go on, you say, what did I do for so many years? We just wasted time. In fact, there was a website called storyofstuff.com, and that Story of Stuff is a cartoonist made by for the environmentalist. And they said that the current society is such a way that we work so hard. So they see the lot of advertisement and propaganda around that. So to have that, we have to work very hard. So we work very hard throughout the day. In the evening, we come back, we watch TV, or we go for shopping, because that we earn money for that, or get innocence and gratification, and next day continue that. So this is what the current society that we are actually, we are entrapped that. It's very difficult to come out of that unless and until we change our subject matter. And then it talks about what we should hear. What we should hear? Any guess? What we should hear?
Glories of Lord Hari.
Very good. So, Tasmad Bharat Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Srotavya Kirtitavyacha Smartavyacha Tabhayam. He said, Tasmad. Tasmad means it's a kind of like conclusion. Therefore, O Bharata, Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari. One desire to be free from all miseries, one must hear Srotavya, hear about, glorify, Kirtitavyacha, and Smartavyam, remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all the miseries. Who should we hear that? We should, those who are desiring to free from that bhayam, free from all the miseries. So this is the message of Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is talking about that our life should be centered around Krishna. Three things are mentioned very nicely: Srotavya, Kirtitavya, and Smartavya. So that is the prime subject matter for hearing, and that is the prime subject matter for all of us. Our life should be centered. And if you see, Srila Prabhupada started this Bhagavad Dharma or propagated this Bhagavad Dharma because initially, if we don't hear, it is very difficult to remember. We know that the essence of all the rules and regulation, Padma Purana says that we must hear. Satatam smartavyam Vishnu, na smartavyam. So always remember Vishnu and never forget Vishnu. So that is the all the conclusions of all the rules and regulations. But here, if we don't hear, we don't glorify that, it will be very difficult for us to remember that. So that's why Srila Prabhupada has devised this our this platform such a way that this Bhagavad Dharma, this train is actually going in a 2 rails. And what is the 2 rails? The tracks Sravana and Kirtana. And when we hear and we glorify what we heard, discuss what we already heard, and that will actually help us to remember. If we directly start remembering, it will be very difficult. If we ask remember, first of all, we will doze off, or there is a possibility that we may remember something which we are naturally attracted, and which we are naturally attracted in today's life is it's a sense gratification. So glorification, remembering Krishna is a far fetched reality. So remembrance will come when we hear and we glorify Krishna. So this is the conclusion. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Srotavya Kirtitavya Smartavya. So such a nicely Sukadeva Goswami he told that. So now when he told about Bhakti is the ultimate, Bhakti is the prime subject matter of Bhagavatam, but there are other people also in the assembly. So he started speaking about the different yogas, Ashtanga Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga. Now the question is, if Bhakti is the prime subject topic of Bhagavatam, why did Sukadeva Goswami speak on this Ashtanga Yoga? And we can also see in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also spoke about Ashtanga Yoga in chapter 6.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, anything?
I think so it was by mistake.
Okay.
So,
Prabhu,
so
for
that
all kinds of
the
people
paths could be
who
compared, Prabhuji.
Sorry, Prabhu.
Arshad Prabhu, you can ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying so that the paths could be compared and to glorify the path of bhakti as such.
Okay, very good. Very nice. Because, and Mataji also said that
yes,
once.
Prabhuji, for all kind of people, because different
Exactly.
people are interested in different paths. So for them, he explained everything.
Very good. Is a Pattu Kishori Mataji?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Dandavat
Mataji.
pranam.
Nice. Yeah, Dandavat pranam. So nice. So because once there is a joke, and like suppose if there is a one king, and the king says that if any citizen not following his rules, and it's a non-obedient to the rules of the states, the king can actually expel him from the kingdom. But what if somebody is not following is not obedient to Lord Krishna, what he can do? Unfortunately, Krishna cannot expel, because there is nothing beyond Krishna and Krishna's energy. So Krishna includes all the people. That's why he said 15.7 that Mamai Amsi Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So all the living entities are part and parcel of Krishna. So Krishna's guidance should cater the needs of all the different peoples. So as rightly Mataji said, so though Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita in Bhagavad Gita about Ashtanga Yoga, finally he says that 6.47 that Yoginamapi sarvesha mad gate antaran shraddhavan bhajate yo mam samya yukta tamo mataha. Among all the yogis, the best is that who is always thinking and absorbed in Krishna. So similarly, here, though Sukadeva Goswami is speaking about Ashtanga Yoga, he's speaking about the next he will talk about the demigod worship, but ultimately Bhakti is the prime object, Bhakti is the supreme, and Bhakti is the purpose of Savai Pumsa Parodharma. That is the essence of all the Bhagavatam shloka. So now here and also I think Harshal Prabhu said that we have to compare because we have to give the different ways. Suppose if you want to show glories of bhakti, so we have to tell that how bhakti is compared to other things. So that is also one way of explaining the glories of bhakti by comparing with the other. So that actually makes bhakti even more emphatically, systematically better and compared to the other paths. So Sukadeva Goswami talks about the Ashtanga Yoga. Of course, he did not mention what are the 5 yamas and niyamas, but just for our understanding. So if you see Ashtanga Yoga, it has Ashtanga. There are 8 different limbs: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. They are in different color: Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi. So Yama, Niyama are the rules, do's and don'ts, the rules and regulation. So if you see that even Ashtanga Yoga is such a wonderful that if you can see that here, 5 yamas: Ahimsa, Satya, then non-stealing, Brahmacharya, and Aparigraha or non-collection. So even if we do today Ashtanga Yoga, we don't even know what are the 5 yamas, and what are the 5 niyamas? Cleanliness, Santosha, satisfaction, contentment, Tapaha, Tapo Divyam. Bharat Maharaj will talk about that 5th canto. Swadhyaya, self-study. And then Ishwaro Paranidhin, that is surrendering to the Supreme Lord. So today we don't even know what are the 5 yamas and niyama. Even yama and niyama talks about surrendering to the Supreme Lord. So the 5 topics which are the 4 topics which are covered in a different color, they are the external. So yama and niyamas. Asana is the physical postures. Pranayama is kumbhaka, rechaka, different breathing things. Pratyahara is withdrawing the mind from the sense object, from the material desires, or from the external things. From Pratyahara, it is the internal things. Dharana is meditating on the object, and Dhyana is a much more detailed or much more engrossed in a dharana, and Samadhi is completely absorbed that. So we can understand that from Pratyahara, Dharana, and Samadhi, it goes much more in internal. Now, Sukadeva Goswami talks about that there are 2 different types of yogis which he mentions. So, for example, now Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. Pratyahara means one should be completely detached from the external desires or material desires. So, even after if somebody is not, so I'm referring to this very wonderful summary from Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, which actually gives a very quick summary and to understand these technical topics in a very simple flow chart, so that people like us in Kali Yuga can understand quickly. So after Pratyahara, it is expected that we have already withdrawn our senses from the sense object. However, if we still have a desire, we are not able to withdraw. So that means we are still attached. And that type of yogi is called as attached yogi. So Sukadeva Goswami says, so there are 2 different types of yogis which he mentions. And so how we differentiate? For the attached yogi, the object of a shelter, the object for meditation is a different, and the object, the dharana ashraya, the object of meditation for the attached yogi is different, and the dharana ashraya for the detached yogi is different. So now, for example, taking to the pratyahara, and Prabhu gives the flowchart decision. So do we have still a desire? Yes. So the person, if we still have a desire, so Sukadeva Goswami classified him as attached yogi. It is expected that after pratyahara, one should be free from material desire. If he still attached, that for yogi is dharnashraya, the object of meditation is Virat Rupa. Now, what is this Virat Rupa? This, because this person is attached to the material things, so he's trying to map all the material elements to the universal form of Lord, because he can see everything. Just like, for example, if you are too engrossed any things, we cannot understand the complicated things. So we have to give something simple through which analogical way we can understand, so that, because that is something that we can see in a day-to-day example. For example, we cannot understand Paramatma, Bhagavan, and Brahman. Then Prabhupada gives an example like sun, which we can see, which we can correlate. And then Bhagavan, Paramatma, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So he gives the sun rays, the sun planet, and the presiding deities of the sun planet. So similarly, here they are not able to visualize, or they're not able to focus on the absolute truth or the Bhagavan. So these people, these yogis, what they do, they map through the material elements that they are able to see the universal form. And this universal form, sometimes context, it is a conceptualized of the spiritual, the universal form through the material elements. It's a mapping of the material element through the spiritual form. So there are different ways, different contexts this can be done. Sometimes it is said that different planetary system is compared to the universal form. For example, the Patala, Rasatala, and all those things compared to the lower portion of the body. And then the Bhuvarsva compared to the thighs, hips, navel, and the upper, like Maharloka, Janaloka, which is compared to the mouth, Tapaloka to the forehead, and Satyaloka to the head. Sometimes even the Varnas are also mapped, like Brahmana, Vaishya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, to this universal form. And sometimes these material elements, what we can say, like the different mountains, are the bones of the universal form. The sun and the moon are the eyes of the universal form. So this is the attached yogi, whose object of meditation is a Virat Rupa, because they are not able to get themselves rid from the material things. So they can see universal form, they can conceptualize universal form through the material element. And even after that they still have a desire, then they go to this Krama Mukti, which is mentioned here, Vaishwanara Loka, then Shishumara Loka, Mahar Loka, Brahma Loka, and then they pierce the false ego, and then so if we have material desire, it takes a lot of time to get rid of or get liberation. And so for example, if we have material desire, and if we are following the path of at least meditating on some universal form or something higher form, then there is some hope. It will take us time, but we have hope. But if we have a material desire and we are not following any spiritual path, the end result, as Mataji was saying, sansara, it is said that punarapi jananam punarapi maranam ye jathare shayanam ye sansare kalu daustare krupaya pare pahi murare. So we'll be tossed in the cycle of birth and death. Then if he get rid of desire, if he gets rid of material desire, then, or if he doesn't have desire even at the stage of pratyahara, then his object of meditation is a Paramatma. Then he goes to dhyana, samadhi, then Brahman realization, and he gets a liberation. So here the two yogis mentioned, attached, detached. Attached, focus on the Virat Rupa; detached, focus on Paramatma. Then the path is very quick. If we focus on Virat Rupa, he's still attached to the desire, then he goes to the Krama Mukti, the different Maharloka, Jamna Loka, Tapaloka, and then finally goes to the beyond this universe and goes to the liberation form. And if he goes to this Paramatma, it is a quicker and faster. And if we don't do any of the things, then we are continuously repeating the cycle of birth and death. If any questions, we'll do at the end or we'll continue here. Because the technical topics, we may have some questions and we can discuss or we can discuss at the end. So now, but as we said, finally, what is important is bhakti. Even though there are many different paths mentioned, different things mentioned, finally, Sukadeva Goswami says, bhakti is the topmost. Not only that, he says, in a spiritual world, it is only bhakti which is actually practiced. If you go to the spiritual world and say, oh, I want to the karma yoga or ashtanga yoga or jnana yoga, no, it is only bhakti yoga which is practiced in the spiritual world. And now, how bhakti is best. So Sukadeva Goswami says, not only me, I'm telling, because we need a Mahajan's example, right? So that is why Bhagavatam is very bona fide, because it talks about, it actually gives the example from the Mahajanas. And then he says that the Siva Pantha Vishada Samsruta Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogo Yato Bhavet. He says, those who are wandering in this universe, there is no more auspicious. Shiva Pantha. Shiva means auspicious. Shiva Pantha. Pantha means a path. Deliverance than what is aimed at the Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga. He says even the Brahma, the great personality like Brahma with the great attention and concentration of the mind studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he come to the conclusion that the attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest perfection of religion. So we can understand that it is not only Sukadeva Goswami's conclusion, it is also conclusion of Brahmadev, one of the Mahajanas. He says that highest attraction, he concluded that the highest attraction is attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then, after understanding that bhakti or the attraction to the Supreme Lord is the highest, how do we achieve that? That is the question. And that is where Sukadeva Goswami says, very wonderful. That is the conclusion. That is the one of the wonderful shloka. That is the essence of the Bhagavatam. Again, he begins the shloka with Tasmat, therefore. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvadha srotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyo bhagavan runam. He says, Tasmat, therefore, sarvatmana, the essential that every human being should hear, glorify, and remember. Who? Hari. When? Sarvada. Where? Sarvatra. That is the similar to the 1.2.6 Savai Pumsa Paro Dharma Yathor Bhakti Adoksaje Ahituki Apratihata Yatma Suprasiddhati. So this bhakti should not be abstracted by any material things, because bhakti is beyond the material things. Bhakti cannot be abstracted by any material things. In fact, bhakti can be given, or bhakti is achieved, or bhakti is gained only through bhakta or through bhakti. Just like life comes from life, so similarly bhakti comes from bhakti. So here Sukadeva Goswami is concluding that the purpose, or how do we achieve that Supreme Personality of Godhead, is saying that only by glorifying, remembering, and hearing the glories of Lord Sri Krishna all the time, all the places. Sarvatra. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada. So that is the conclusion. So now the question may come, logical mind, the question may come, what benefit I will get if I follow this Bhagavatam or follow the path of Bhakti? And that is where the shloka, next shloka talks about that. Pibanti e Bhagavat Atmanam Sata Kathamrutam Sravana Puteshu Samrutam Punantite Vishaya Vidushita Ashayam Vrajanti Tas Charana Sarohuantikam. So he says, Sukadeva Goswami says that today our ashaya, our goal, or our life, our aim of our life is Vidushita. Vidushita means
Perfection.
Vidushita, Dusha.
Humorous, I think. Joker.
Pure?
humor.
Pure,
No,
pure.
no,
Pure.
it's opposite to the pure.
Vidushita. Okay.
Dushita. Dushita means
Dushita. Dushita.
Impure.
Criticizing.
Dushita, Pradushana. Pradushana means polluted.
Dushita means blaming or
Polluted.
Corrupted.
Pollution, corrupted. Corrupted. So today, our aim of life, Ashaya, our aim is Vidushita. How it is polluted? Vishaya. Right? Our aim of our life or the aspiration of our lives today is polluted. Vishaya Vidushita Ashaya. So if we practice bhakti, the first thing will happen that it will punantite Vishaya Vidushita Ashayam. It will purify the aim of our life, which is actually polluted because of the Vishaya, but because of the material enjoyment. And second, so now how do we practice this Amruta? Because how do we purify this our goal or the aim of our life or the aspiration of our life? By Piban Kathamrutam, this Amruta. Now this Amruta is something not to be drunk, but it is to be heard. Pibanti e Bhagavat Atmanam Sata Kathamruta Sravanam. So we have to hear through the ear holes of this our human body, and by hearing this Kathamruta, first thing will happen, it will purify the aspiration of our life. Punantite Vishaya Vidushitam Ashayam. And the second thing that will happen, that it will lead, it will enable us to attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality. Thus, Charana, Sarohu, Saro means the lotus, will be able to attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very important. We are spending a lot of time, but the important aspect here is that the two things are mentioned by Sukadeva Goswami, that our aspirations will be purified and then we'll achieve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Sukadeva Goswami continues about the demigod worship also. And then he comes to the very wonderful, very famous shloka. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama utaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusha param. He said that whether we have desire like devotees, akama, whether we have all desires like karmis, sarva kama, or we have desires like moksha kama, like gyanis, what should we do? We should worship. How? Tivrena, very intensely. Bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. So we should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in fact, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talks about the Madhya Lila 25th chapter, where he says that, because sometimes we may get question, I'm actually worshipping Krishna, but my prayers are not answered, because Krishna will answer our prayers in the form he wants us, which will be beneficial for us. So even if we ask something, Krishna, material things, why we should worship Krishna? Because there are many examples like this. Even if we have desire, example is given of Dhruva Maharaj, even if we have desire, but Krishna fulfill our desire in the way, in the format that we will never ask the same thing again. And that is why it's, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that is why Krishna will purify us. He will force us to take a shelter of Lord Sri Krishna. So that is why even if we have desire, even if we don't have desire, even if desire for liberation, one should actually, so Sukadeva Goswami said that still we worship the Lord Sri Krishna. Then Parikshit Maharaj asked questions. Parikshit Maharaj asked further question. Now, okay, hearing Katha, because now you told me about that hearing Katha, Katha Amruta, now you tell me more about Krishna. So then he said that you tell me about Krishna in Krishna dealing with the external energy and Krishna dealing with the internal energy. Krishna dealing with the in external energy, nothing but the Purusha avatars, and Krishna dealing with the internal energy, nothing but the Lila avatars and different avatars, Manvantara avatars. Then Sukadeva Goswami says, because he says, I will tell the discussion happened between Lord Brahma and Narada. So you say that now there is an internal loop. Sorry, the external loop is now the external loop is discussion between
Suta Mahamuni and Saunaka Rishis.
the sages of
No,
Naimisharanya.
no, and then Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit.
Parikshit Maharaj.
Second loop.
Yeah.
And now Sukadeva
Yes.
Goswami is telling now, okay, I will tell you that how Narada also asked the same question and how Brahma answered the same thing. So I will tell you. So Narada asked the sixth question. He said, what is Yed Rupam? What is Yed Adhishtanam? What is the shelter of this? So now he's talking about the Purusha Avatara. Purusha Avatara means Krishna's Avatara dealing with this external energy. So Yed Rupam, what are the symptoms of this material world? Yed Adhishtanam, what is the shelter of this world? Then Yed Srushtam, Srushti means creation, how it is created, how it is conserved, what it depends on, and what it's composed of. So all these 6 questions asked. And then he also asked one auxiliary questions or the extra question. He says, I thought you are the creator, you are the supreme, but I see you are meditating on something. Can you please tell me who you are meditating on? Then he says that actually I'm not the creator. The creator is the Lord Krishna, Vishnu. And I am creating from that creation, that the secondary creation. I am the secondary creation, and I'm always meditating on that. So he dispels the doubts of Narada that he is not the supreme Lord. Of course, Narada knows everything, but for the clarification for all the people like all of us, he actually clarifies. So now Sukadeva Goswami answering the questions what Parikshit Maharaj asked by quoting the discussion between Narad Muni and Brahmadev. And he says, now Brahmadev answered, okay, there are 6. So Yad Rupam. Yad Rupam means the symptoms of this material world. So what is this Yad Rupam? He says this Yad Rupam or the material world is Dravya, Karma, Kala, Swabhava and Jiva. This universe is made of all these things, or it is a symptom of that. So what is the Dravya? Dravya means the element. What are those elements?
Material, Panchamahabhut.
Panchamahabhuta. So then there is a
And
Kala. Kala,
time.
everything happens under the influence of Kala. All the transformation interactions happens under the influence of Kala. And then this material energy is glanced by Vishnu with the Jiva Tattva. And this Jiva comes with the 2 things. He comes with his karma and he comes with his Swabhava. What is a karma?
One's fruitive actions, whatever.
Yes, right. Our destinies or the results that is awaiting, right? And then Swabhava,
Eternal nature.
the nature, not the eternal nature, but the nature that the living entity is actually carrying because of the going through the material world. And then he because of the different, because of the interaction with the material nature, he acquires some kind of Swabhava. And that Swabhava it's so Jiva, comes with its karma, with the Swabhava, Kala, and all these material elements. So that is where the first question is called as symptoms of this manifest world, which is the Yad Rupam. Then he says Yad Adhishtanam and Yad Param, both are actually on the same thing. Yad Adhishtanam is what is its shelter and what it depends on that. And we know that very famous shloka that he talks about Narayana para Vedo, Deva Narayana Angaja, Narayana para Loka, Narayana para Makha, Narayana para Yoga, Narayana para Tapo, Narayana para Jnanam, Narayana param Gatim. Narayana is the shelter and everything depends upon Nara. The Vedas, the conclusion, the essence, the purpose of the Vedas is Narayana, right? Sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto matah smurti jnanam apohanam vedaiche sarvehar amay veda vedo. Devas, the Devas actually look towards Krishna. Loka, among the lokas, it is a Narayana para loka. Yogas, all the yogas, among all the yogas, it is Narayana who is the purpose. Tapa, the austerities, the purpose of all the austerities is Narayana. Jnanam, the essence of all the knowledge to come to Krishna, and the gati, the destination is the Narayana. So we can understand the Yad Adhisthanam and Yad Param is nothing but the Lord Krishna or Vishnu in the form of Narayana. So this is the second and third question, not in back-to-back answered, but Yat Param is answered in a different ways, but finally it comes to the Vishnu only. And then much complicated question, Yat Srushtam, and which is very difficult, sometimes very difficult to understand for all of us. So now we know that Lord Vishnu or Mahavishnu, which is also called Karnadakshay Vishnu, he actually glances on this material nature along. When he glances Jiva and the time, so there is a Kala. So Jiva comes with the karma and Swabhava, and also he impregnates with the time. So there is a, so when he impregnates, the seed-like form is called as a Pradhan. So Pradhan is the where all these material natures are actually material elements are there, but they are not agitated yet. So that is called the seed-like or the elementary. Like first when you sow the seed, nothing will happen. Then after some times, but the seed includes everything. The seed includes the branches, twigs, flowers, fruits, everything. So that seed is called Pradhan. And Lord Vishnu will actually impregnate in that Pradhan, Jiva and Kala. Jiva comes with his Swabhava, Jiva comes with his Karma. And once the time starts forming, or then the three modes become active. In Pradhan, the three modes are inactive. So once the three modes started active, the first thing which gets predominant is called as a Sattva Guna, and that form is called as Mahatattva. So Pradhan, which is when all the three modes, the modes are not active. From Pradhan as a time, because we know that all the interaction happens because of time. When the time starts acting, the Sattva Guna becomes prominent. That situation or that state is called as Mahatattva. After that, it becomes Rajas, the Rajoguna becomes mode of passion becomes prominent. That is called as Sutra Tattva. And from Sutra Tattva, so Sattva Guna become prominent, Rajaguna then finally the Tamoguna becomes prominent. That is called as Ahankara. So we can understand that the whole creation is actually coming out of Ahankara, which is prominently in Tamasa Guna, Rajoguna. Sorry, Tamoguna, mode of ignorance. And from that, even though predominantly it is Tamasa or mode of ignorance, but there is also mode of goodness, there is some mode of passion and some mode of ignorance. For example, devotee gives a very nice example that sometimes thieves will actually do, they will steal. And when they will steal, but among them, they will say, okay, we have to be very honest when we divide among ourselves. So sometimes some kind of goodness is still present there. So even overall, Ahankara is where this mode of ignorance is prominent, but in that goodness, from that goodness comes Jnana Shakti, and from Jnana Shakti comes Adi Daiva, and from there comes the mind and 10 senses Devatas. When Ahankara, from Ahankara, the portion when there is a mode of goodness comes mind and the sense Devatas. So Devatas are like Surya Dev in the difference, which are actually the sense, the deities of the different senses. When from Ahankara, when the passion is prominent, or the passion from the Ahankara and from the passion comes the prana and the 10 senses and intelligence. And when Ahankara and ignorance, from there comes the 5 elements and 5 Tanamatras. So prana, so in the passion, when the prana, from the prana comes the power for the senses, and from the prana comes the power for the karmendriya, and from the intelligence, the power comes for the Jnanendriya. So prana will give Shakti to the 5 working senses, intelligence will give Shakti to the 5 Gyanendriya. So that is in the mode of ahankara with the passion, and ahankara with the ignorance comes with the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and also the 5 tanmatras. And the tanmatras are, what are the 5 tanmatras?
Touch, form, I think
Very
5 sense objects associated with
sense
5
objects. Sense
yeah,
objects.
cross
So
elements.
this is how the whole creation actually starts. So when we see from Mahavishnu, these universes are coming out. So the universes come, but the process of creation is what Lord Brahma is mentioning here from Vishnu. Vishnu Pradhan impregnated with the Jiva. Jiva comes with his Swabhava and its karma, then time. And when time starts acting, all the interaction, then Sattva Guna is Mahat Tattva, Raja Guna is Sutra Gana, and Tamo Guna is Ahankara. Ahankara and goodness comes Devatas and sense Devatas and mind. Ahankara and passion comes the prana and the 5 workendriya, the Gyanendriya, Karmendriyas, and then 5 Karmendriyas, 5 Gyanendriyas, and comes with the intelligence. And then for Ahankara, along with that ignorance comes the 5 senses and 5 sense objects. So this is how the whole creation is there. So it's very complicated to understand, but just to explain that how this thing. So finally, if you see that it is because of Krishna's time energy, everything starts moving that. And then these gunas which are in, so for all of us will become very difficult to understand, but we can see that there is a seed which is a pradhan, and when we water that seed, it becomes fructify, and after some time then you can see that some plant will, and then it will grow, and then things will come. So similarly, from pradhan, mahat tattva, ahankara, then different things. Does that help, or is confusing?
Prabhuji, so
We'll try to get the questions at the end.
sure.
So, and then finally, another question is that what is that is composed of? And Lord Krishna said it is composed of the Supreme Person of Godhead. By expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. So it is nothing but it is composed of from the Supreme Lord. So then next question is how this samstam conserved. And then Sukadeva Goswami quoting Lord Brahma, he says that it is a Krishna who is actually creating this, and then finally it is he who is maintaining, and then he finally absorbing them. The destruction and conservation, because when it is destruction, then actually it is conserved. So both are actually the same terminology. So finally it is said it is Krishna who is actually Mahavishnu or Karnadaksha Vishnu, who is maintaining and who is absorbing then finally everything. So when everything destroyed, it goes back to Vishnu. That is where it is conserved. So now after the question, I'm not sure whether we should take question here or take question later, because it will be appropriate if we discuss here, but it's already 8 o'clock and we have few slides and we are done that. Shall we take question at the end, depend upon the time? First we'll cover and then we'll take the questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Then the question will come, it is so complicated. Why should we hear about Krishna's Maya? Because if everything is about Krishna's Leela, sometimes then why Acharyas spend so much of time about this creation? We may not understand, but there is a purpose why why this topic about Maya is mentioned here. And there is one shloka which actually says that when we hear these activities of Lord Krishna, is in a different energies, and because when we do this, when we hear this regularly with the devotion, then one is sure to get out of this illusory energy of the Lord. Nityam Maya Yatma na muhyati. Such a person na muhyati. He will not be bewildered, rather he will be actually will get out of that illusory energy of the Lord. So when we hear this, we may not understand that. In fact, Prabhupada says that we don't have capacity to understand what Bhagavatam's details are there, and we don't have even competency to disprove that Bhagavatam. So we have to understand with the faith, and try to hear multiple times. Otherwise, it's very difficult to this such a complicated creation. And by the glories of Acharyas, and thanks to Srila Prabhupada, that at least we have opportunity to hear that. So after hearing about this Purusha Avatara, Sukadeva Goswami quoting Brahma and Narada, the discussion, and then Parikshit Maharaj asked, now you tell me about the Lila Avatar, which is the spiritual and full of bliss. The Purusha, the Lila Avataras, then Shloka. So this is the creation is in the 5th chapter. 6th chapter also some question continues, and from 7th chapter Sukadeva Goswami talks about the different avatars. In fact, there are 25 avatars are mentioned. Varaha, Vamanadev, Hari, and even Lord Krishna's Mohini avatar. Different avatars are actually mentioned. And Sukadeva Goswami continues that it is very, who can understand God, who can understand Krishna's energy? It's very difficult. He says it is even easier to count the number of atoms in this universe, but it is very difficult to understand Krishna and Krishna's energy. What to talk about? Even Name Vidu Suraganaha, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 10.23, I guess, where he says that it's very, even Devatas cannot understand what to talk about. So he says, only by the mercy of Lord one can actually understand. So which is similar to Name 18.54 Bhakti. So that is the shloka where he says that only by bhakti one can actually understand Krishna. There is no way that we can understand. So by mentioning about all the 25 avatars, anyone who is specifically favored by the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, because of his unalloyed surrender to Lord Sri Krishna, he can overcome this ocean and he can understand this insurmountable energy, and he will be able to understand the Supreme Lord, which is very difficult. But by surrendering to Lord Sri Krishna, only by bhaktema, only by bhakti one can actually understand Krishna. Then Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj asked me, how is that Jiva, who is a spiritual, who attains the body which is material? And then Sukadeva Goswami says it happens because of one's association or one's understanding or taking the false identity, and because of ahankara. And because it gives an example or analogy, like in a dream, one may see something and he starts identifying with that, but in reality it is not like that. So similarly, Sukadeva Goswami says that to Parikshit Maharaj, that is because of that our identifying ourselves with this material world, or taking different identities, that we actually come to this material world and try to identify and try to. So otherwise, how the spiritual entity like Jiva can actually enjoy material things? Because of this false identity. And then he continues that, then he also quotes finally that he gives his own, Sukadeva Goswami gives the example of Lord Brahma again. And Brahma was actually going through the ignorance, but he actually did tapa, right? At the beginning of the creation. So when he came, actually appeared on the Navi from that lotus, and then Brahma appeared. He said he was actually clueless what to do. Then he goes to he starts searching what is the source of that. He couldn't find, but he could hear only tapa, and then he gone through the different, austerities for 1,000 celestial years. And then Lord actually appeared. And then Brahma asked about the same question. Parikshit Maharaj asked about, you explain me about the spiritual and the material things. And that is where Lord actually tells to Parikshit, to Lord Brahma, about the Chatur Shloki, the 4 important, the essence of Bhagavatam. So that is the shloka from 2.9.33, sorry, 33, 34, 35, 36. 33, 34, 35, 36. So that is the 4 shlokas which are the important Chatur Shloki, where the first 2 shlokas talks about the Sambandha. We'll not go in detail. The 3rd shloka talks about the ultimate purpose or the goal, which is the Krishna Prema, and how to achieve that is spoken in the 2.9.36, which is Avideya. So this Lord Krishna spoke to Brahmadev, this 4 Chaturshloki, and it has expanded, and finally we have Sukadeva Goswami explaining to sages of the Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami explaining to the sages of Naimisharanya around 18,000 Bhagavatam shlokas. So it was expanded. So he says, in Sambandha, he talks about that, how before creation and after creation, what that exists, it is only I that exists. So he talks about that, about the Lord's identity and how Lord's eternity is explained. And then he also mentions about that, what is that Maya. So whatever appears to have any value without relation to Krishna has no reality. And it is said that it is to be considered as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So Krishna talks about the Maya. So these 2 shloka, Acharyas actually talks, Acharyas define that these 2 shloka defines the Sambandha Yoga or Sambandha Tattva. Then the next he says that those people who are actually on the highly elevated platform, they can actually, because Krishna exists in every atom of this universe and everything is created, and then he's outside of that, and the people are able to see that in every atom, that Pandita Samadarshani is able to see Krishna everywhere. So that kind of prayojana where we are able to see, that is the ultimate goal, where we are seeing Krishna everywhere. So that is the prayojan. And how to achieve that prayojan, which is taking shelter of the Supreme, taking the Supreme Lord through his devotees as a spiritual master, and surrendering to him. By surrendering to the spiritual master, engaging in bhakti, one can actually achieve the prayojan, where we will be able to see Krishna in every atom of the universe, internally and the externally. That is where the prayojan is there. So finally, after saying that, the 10th chapter, which is the last chapter of the 2nd canto, where Sukadeva Goswami talks, that is Shaunaka Rishi to the Sutta Goswami, and then he talks about these 10 topics which will be covered in Srimad Bhagavatam: Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam, Muti, Manvantara, Ishanu, Katha, Nirodha, Mukti, and Ashraya. Its definition and canto, which canto it is mentioned, like Sarga 3rd and 4th. Visarga is a secondary creation by Lord Brahma. Sthanam and its example are much more explanation. So that is how the 2nd canto concludes about these 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, where if you go starting now from the 3rd canto, which will begin from there, and then Lord Sukadeva Goswami would continue to talk about the secondary creation, just like 2.4 talks about the creation. Even 3rd canto will talk about the secondary creation. So once this universe is created, how now Brahma creates the secondary things, that actually talks. And then we will go actually the summary of the 3rd canto later. But finally, it concludes on the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam and the 10 topics which Bhagavatam covers. There is a shloka actually, Sarga, Visarga, Sthana, Poshanam, in the 2.10.1. So that is the conclusion of their summary of the 2nd canto. So it has 10 chapters. So first 3 chapter talks about different aspects of spiritualities, which is Bhakti Yoga, then Ashtanga Yoga, then demigod worship. Finally, Bhakti is the topmost. Then Brahma, so Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj asking about, you tell me about the external energy, Krishna dealing with the external energy and internal energy. Then he quotes Narada and Brahma. Then Narada asks the 6th question, Brahma answers, and Sukadeva Goswami quotes that. And then finally, Sukadeva Goswami continues about the Lila Avatara. And then Parikshit Maharaj wanted some more information or more Harikatha, not information rather, it is Harikatha he wanted. And that then Brahma, then Sukadeva Goswami quotes Brahma and Lord Krishna's dealing. And then Krishna spoke the 4 Chaturshloki and finally concludes with the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th chapter. Okay, any questions or discussion? I don't know, it's very difficult to me also to understand what. I don't know whether it helped or it made you more confused.
I have one question.
Yes,
can you explain all the expansions? Because in some slokas, we say Narayana vidmahe Vasudeva dhimahi tanno Vishnu prachodayat, and we say Krishna, Narayana is expansion of Krishna. And then from there, the further expansion happens and Purushavataras comes. Is it possible to explain that expansion or relation of that amshas?
Okay, so as we understand from Lord's, if you see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, 21st or 22nd slok chapter, it is explained in a details of different incarnations or the expansions of Lord. Then it starts with Lord, then it expands in Chatur Shloki. From the Chatur Shloki comes Narayana, first Narayana. From that comes the second Chatur Shloki, and from there comes the second Narayana, and from that Narayana comes the first Purusha Avatara, which is Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu, when we are talking about all the universes, it is Mahavishnu. From Mahavishnu's, each universe, there is one Vishnu, which is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, which is in each universe, and from his navel comes the lotus, and from that lotus is Brahma appears, and each atom of that universe, it is a Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So Mahavishnu, which is the source of all the universe, and in each universe there is a Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. On that Garbhodakshaya Vishnu comes Lord Brahma, and each atom of the universe, which is a Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. But
So
all these are
Krishna, Narayana 1 and Narayana 2, and then Mahavishnu, and then the remaining Purusha.
Actually, you see, what is Narayana? I was just hearing Ayana means, what is Ayana?
Existence, I think.
Narayana is actually what I heard.
Water, Prabhuji?
Resting on water. Nara, Purusha, which is a Krishna or Vishnu, resting on the water. So that is Narayana. So technically it could be also called as Mahavishnu. So, but yeah, it's a different technical terms which actually explain. But, and we can also understand, but it is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, but we hear from different sources where actually Vishnu never even contacts directly with even external energy. It is Shambhu which actually comes in contact with that. So, but that is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam here. Does that help, Prabhu? Sri Gaur Prabhu, anything on this expansion you want to add here, Prabhu? Because sometimes we get confused and get lost because it's very complicated.
I think so Shanmukh Prabhu was just mentioning that sometimes different names are used, like sometimes we say Vasudev, sometimes Narayan.
Yeah, because there is one verse repeated 2 times. One first initial chapters, it was first canto, he said Vasudeva Paro Veda, and now we said Narayana Paro Veda. I know that it is all the expansions, but I just wanted to understand if there's any
technically there is
in the relation.
No differences between Vasudev and Narayana. So because sometimes it is now when you say Mahavishnu, the question typically will come that whether Krishna is the source of avatar. If Krishna is the source of avatar, how actually he comes from Vishnu? Because in the material world, everything comes from the Vishnu. So the question comes that is it Krishna is the source of Vishnu or Vishnu is the source of Krishna? But for us, technically, there is a difference. But for us, we understand that Krishna is in office as a Krishna is in office as a Vishnu, Krishna as a home as a Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So, but there are Vasudeva and Narayana. So Narayana is nothing but where it comes to beginning with the contact with the spiritual, the material world. Because from the Narayana comes all the Purusha avatars. And the first expansion, the Chatur Shloka, which is Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Sankarshana. So that is a Sankarshana. From that Sankarshana comes the second. Actually, I said wrong. From the first Sankarshana, comes the expansion of Narayana, right? From that Narayana comes the second Chaturshloki, and from that second Chaturshloki comes again Narayana, and from that comes this Vishnu avatars. I have to correct, but I think this is the one. If somebody has the right information now, but I think it is something wrong here. So Chaturshloki, first Chaturshloki, from first Chaturshloki Sankarsana comes the second Chaturshloki, and from second Chaturshloki comes Narayana, and from this comes Vishnu avatar. I will try to get exact things. If any correction, I will correct, Bro. I will pass this information to Sri Gaur, Bro.
Thank you. And probably there are questions on the chat. Does anyone has any other question for Prabhuji?
I have one more question on this
Yeah, please go ahead.
creation. Yeah, Karma Srishti.
Yes, Bro.
So, Prabhuji, so we in this Karma Srishti, finally we have like 23 elements, right? All
Yes.
these are, but it is at the end of it, all the 23 elements are there and the modes are active. So
yes,
and that's why we call it as maybe that is the manifested version of and it's called Prakriti or manifested version of the material nature or something. So, and sometimes we say 24, sometimes we say 23. That I have one doubt. And second doubt I have is, so these are all one aspect, and then Jiva is a separate aspect, right? So Prabhuji, so the body, mind, out of our subtle body, whatever we have, all that comes under the material nature. All this is part of that 23 elements, and the living entity, whatever we call soul, that is separate, right, Prabhuji?
Yeah. So because if you see this, the elements of this material world, it does not actually go in as long as grow, as long as there is a touch of spiritual things. So the jiva has to, the spiritual entity jiva has to be there with this material world. Then otherwise the table or the objects cannot grow on its own. So there should be some spiritual touch. So the living entity, which is what we say that as a soul, which is a part and parcel of Krishna, which is eternal, which is a spiritual in nature, which when it's impregnated in the material world, then Lord Brahma gives him a form. And according to our nature, according to our fruitive result that we are supposed to get. So then, just like suppose we get some ingredients from the market, and then we make a different manifestation of that. So then somebody is in the animalistic manifestation, somebody is a plant, somebody is in a beast, somebody is a pashu, somebody is a Manusha, human beings. So that is the form given by Lord Brahma. So that is the secondary creation. So living entity, which is neither created nor destroyed. Living entity is always there. So it only take part into the creation and destruction as long as we have that karma and swabhava, especially the karma. And once we surrender to Lord Sri Krishna, and when we are free from all these desires, then we get liberated and everything get destroyed, which is the material bodies, which is the subtle body and the sthul sharira, the sukshma sharira and the sthul sharira get destroyed. And then finally we actually go back to the spiritual world. So, but the living entity, when we come to the materiality, the same living entity with the same spiritual nature, but it gets covered with the ignorance, because the whole universe creation starts with the hankara, which is the mode of ignorance predominated. I don't know, it is helping to your question or
Yes, Prabhuji, I was trying to differentiate this material nature with what and all, because here all the elements were described, and also it included, if we see, mind also is part of it, intelligence and false ego probably is also part of it. So
yes,
except Jiva, nothing else is missed in that 23, but it was 23 elements it was mentioned, but some places we say 24 elements. So
that's called universal consciousness, Chetana, which is mentioned the 24th element. So depend upon 25, 26. There are people depend upon the context. They can actually say 23, 24 elements also. But 23 is what Bhagavatam actually talks, that the basic elements 23, and somewhere in Sankhya Yoga we can see 24 elements also. Prabhupada writes 23, 24 different purposes, depend upon the context. But yes, if we remove that universal consciousness, then it is 23 elements. When you add that, it becomes 24 elements.
okay.
But the living entity, which is outside of this creation, it is only impregnated. You just understand that it's impregnated. That means the entity is already there. It is not created. If we are created, then we actually defy the form Bhagavad Gita Shloka 2.12. Natveham jatu nasam nato neme janati. We are neither created nor destroyed, right? We are always eternally present there. So Jiva is there. He comes here, and this is how he goes into the creation cycle, and then he continues as long as he has the independent desire. And then he takes a different form given by Brahma, depend upon our destiny and depend upon our desires, we get a different forms. And that is created by Lord Brahma, secondary creation. In third canto, 5th chapter, he will mention about the secondary creation.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Any other question, Prabhu?
No, I don't have any other question, Prabhuji.
Please share your question with me. I can ask. Okay. So there is no other question to you, Prabhu?
No.
Okay. So when I was studying, it's very difficult. But then I was reading Prabhupada's one of the things that he said, it's very difficult to understand, to verify all those details. It's so complicated. And we cannot even disprove that. So better we accept this as it is with the faith and devotion. And it is better for us when we understand this as it is. It is also help us. Now, why we should actually understand this also? Another question comes. Not only that we will be free from Maya, but the second important aspect of that, that when we understand that how Krishna loves that, when this creation actually goes, that means Krishna's love for all of us, that he's making opportunity for all of us, that we go through this, but finally he wants all of us to surrender to him. And that is with the essence of all the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. So he's creating all those things out of love for all of us, so that we go through that, we purify ourselves and go back to the spiritual world where we have come from.
Prabhuji also said that, Sri Gaur Prabhu said, it also to understand how insignificant we are compared to even Brahma, who is Jiva Tattva.
Absolutely. Once this happened two times, Srila Prabhupada was in 22nd Avenue, 26th Avenue in New York. And in that matchless gift initial days, devotees were saying, Swamiji, it's very difficult to be humble. And then Swamiji started, he said, in the whole creation of the Lord, there is a 3/4 creation of the spiritual world, 1/4 creation of this material world. And in this 1/4 creation, there are unlimited universes. And one of the universes that we are staying, and that universe, there are innumerable planets. One of the planets is the earthly planet. And on that earthly planet, there are 7 continents. And in that 7 continents, one of the continents is North America. In that many countries, one of the countries is North America. And then are America, United States. And there are many states. One of the states is New York. And there are many cities. And one of the cities is New York. And there are many lanes. And one of the lanes in 26 seconds. And there are many people. And on that, among that, those many people, and one person is saying that, how can I become humble? So when we understand the creation, is mind-boggling. So, I mean, it's just beyond. We don't even know what's happening within our body, what to talk about outside of our body, within this universe, outside of this universe, and beyond this material creation. So finally, we have no other choice. That's why, and imagine, I mean, as you quoted Sri Gaur Prabhu, that it actually tells how significant, and also it actually tells that how great is our Lord, that he does all those things, he still acts as a small baby boy and getting confined with a rope, and he's called as Damodara. Can you imagine somebody, the prime minister or the president, having so much of power, but behaving like a small child, coming and saying that, and I am become your chariot driver, please tell me what should I? And he said that take my chariot between two armies. That is the greatness. So from doing this, we understand how significant we are. We also understand how great is our Lord. And third thing that we understand, that how merciful is our Lord. Okay, I think we'll end this technical. So thank you, Prabhu, for giving opportunity. It is after a long time I revised this second canto, but it was nice that sometimes we get confused between Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, Lord Brahma, Narad Muni, and the Lord Krishna's conversation, but it was little clarified to me. I hope it also helped all the participant devotees here as well. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you. It
Thank
really
you
helped.
so much, Prabhuji. It was very, very useful. You talked with a lot of conviction. And today's session was at a completely different level, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Prabhu, thank you. It's all Srila
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much,
so
Prabhuji.
Prabhu. Our wonderful
All Dandot Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Lord Pranam. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Great revision, Prabhuji, for all of us.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.